Hello, I wanted to talk to you about the opportunity presented by the recent changes in the Air France Pro recruitment process. This is the English version of a video that I shot in French, but I think it affects all of you, particularly if you are a recently qualified pilot who's got a 320 or a Boeing 737 type rating or any CS25 type rating, and you've started flying perhaps for a smaller airline, an ACMI airline, and you're now going to go for a major airline recruitment. With limited experience, you are now going to be facing recruiters that have a lot of experience and that expect certain behaviors that you maybe don't yet have. And that is a trap if this happens. So at the beginning of 2025, the Air France recruitment department informed candidates that those with 200 hours of CS25 experience, typically then on the Boeing 737 or Airbus A320, would be able to apply and move more quickly through the recruitment process. So of course, on the face of it, it looks like a great opportunity for those who meet the criteria, but is also a major trap. So they'll be invited relatively quickly, possibly within just 3 or 4 months, to attend a recruitment session with this major airline. At that stage, they'll have around 500 hours of CS25 experience, and this is very little. They've started to gain experience. They probably think that they start to know quite a bit, but in fact, at this point in their career, less than a year of flying, they still lack a lot of depth in their understanding of many areas of their environment, probably more than they think. They're still discovering quite a lot, and they'll be facing, like I said, an experienced recruiter who expects mature, well thought out behaviors and will forgive very little. So they'll expect a maturity in the understanding of procedures and their actual application that may not yet be there, because when we're starting, we make mistakes. When we're starting, we're discovering. When we are starting, we iterate until we become better. So if you're in this situation, and even if you're not attending an Air France selection, I believe this video will be useful to you. So if you're in this situation, you're flying right now the 737 or the 320 or any other machine, perhaps even if you're flying business jets or turboprops, and you fly for a smaller airline with the ambition to get into a larger airline, be aware that whilst your airline teaches you the procedures that they would like you to apply, their correct application is not always obvious to a young or junior first officer, and it will just take time and several seasons until it is appropriately applied. And if you would ever mention an inappropriate behavior that you would not be aware that is inappropriate, because maybe there was a lack of CRM training in your airline, or maybe some captains have gotten into a habit of doing things their own way and the airline doesn't have a process to sort of readdress them because maybe they are short of captains. Well, then if you're unaware that this behavior really wouldn't be palatable to a major airline, then if you would mention that during the recruitment process, it could really disqualify you. So let me give you some concrete examples of candidates that I've worked with who lacked this sort of depth and didn't really understand what they could have done better. And the recruiter would have really liked that they had understood that. Well, the recruiter would love that they would have applied things properly, but failing that, at least known what they could have done differently. So with them, rest assured, we worked extensively to address these issues. We do this in our advanced interview practice sessions that our advanced interview course clients can attend for free every 2 weeks. And we can also work through these issues in consultations. But so let's go into a couple of examples. So the example one was a misunderstanding of de-icing procedures by a candidate. So by the way, we just finished the winter season. This video is being recorded at the end of February 2025. And so a candidate described a situation where de-icing had been performed successfully. So they taxied out. And however, during the takeoff roll, the aircraft had to be stopped for a technical reason. It was a minor technical reason, just a takeoff config. And the aircraft didn't accelerate very much and stopped fairly quickly on the runway. The crew followed procedures initially, so the aircraft was stopped, a PA was made, situation was assessed, and then they spoke with the control, and they exited the runway properly to evaluate whether they could continue the flight. So the situation is a tricky one to manage because many actions need to be performed correctly. Like I said, stop the plane, secure the plane, inform the cabin crew and the passengers, communicate with air traffic control, where initially you inform the crew, this is the captain, attention crew at stations. And then you start to deal with the situation that you've got in front of you. When the situation is controlled, you will tell the cabin that normal operations can resume. You will make a quick PA, and then you will discuss with ATC in order to organize your exit from the runway, right? So once you've done that, normally you would exit the runway, and then you would do the after landing sequence, which would then trigger the after landing checklist. And there you would decide whether to return to the stand or whether conditions are still met for you to be able to do another takeoff and resume your flight. Now, in this case, the exit of the runway wasn't done in a very clean manner, meaning that they didn't do the after landing sequence. They therefore didn't do the after landing checklist. So the airplane was a little bit out of sorts. And then the decision-making sequence was also incomplete. So assuming that you had done the right sequence exiting the runway and put the airplane back into an expected configuration after landing, you would then want to isolate yourself somewhere on a taxiway with a bit of thinking time to see if conditions are still met for your next departure. Well, now you've got a little bit less fuel to start with, and the first thing that's going to affect you is fuel. And if you're taking a lot less fuel these days than at the beginning of my career, so fuel is quickly, for most of these cases, for half of them, you're going to return to the stand and have to refuel. In this case, then also have to de-ice. So you're going to get into a big delay. But you have to recompute quite a lot of things. So first of all, what happened? What's the state of the brakes? Is there enough fuel? Is the technical situation that we have fixed? Why did it happen? And of course, in this case, they had de-iced. So is the de-icing fluid still within the holdover time? Is the de-icing condition of the airplane still good? And this depends on several factors: the time that has lapsed, the holdover time that you had, the minimum and maximum holdover time that you had. And of course, if the icing conditions had maybe had improved or worsened. Okay, so you would take all that into account. But there was one thing that you wouldn't want to assess as well. And in this case, this candidate didn't. It's once you've done a takeoff run, the de-icing fluid is considered to be inoperative. Now, this is only true if it goes above 30 knots, which is taxi speed, because of course the de-icing fluid is supposed to sustain taxi. But obviously, if you exit the runway after a rejected takeoff, and you would have enough fuel to be able to redepart and still meet, why would you have enough fuel to redepart, basically? If you had taken excess fuel or if you had not yet burnt your contingency. But then you would have to consider, am I happy to go having burnt most of my contingency now? Or did I actually want to have this contingency for when I am airborne? This is a decision the captain would make, that you would make with the captain. In most cases, you would say, okay, well, that's also why it's here to be used, so let's use it and let's go. Okay. Then you would have to recompute performance. You would have to redo a whole bunch of checklists from the after start checklist. You'd have to do quite a lot before the airplane is ready to depart. And then, of course, you would do a rebriefing, and that would all take time. And part of this rebriefing, you would brief risks, and at some point you would get to this holdover time. So, and you'd have to assess whether the fluid is still valid. So first of all, since when is your holdover time stopping? Are you still within that time? And there's a minimum and a maximum depending on the severity of the conditions. You would assess that, and assuming that things are fine, you could, if you've passed the minimum holdover time, you would want to do an interior inspection, so exterior inspection from the interior of the aircraft, which in this case would be very smart to be doing. And so you are expected to have this sort of reflexes. And when you are describing an example like this, you have to be very structured about what you did. First, we did this. Then we did that. We exited the runway. We did the after landing checklist. And then after that, we got into a decision sequence, basically we went into a DODA, diagnose what happened. What are our options? Go back to the stand or continue the takeoff. Make a decision, inform the cabin crew, inform the passengers. This is exactly the DODA sequence. And then allocate the tasks in order to be able to go, do a briefing, identify the risks, and then indeed you would execute your departure. Okay, so that's what you would want to be telling a recruiter, a structured sequence that is really convincing. This candidate didn't do that, and so he put himself at risk. And the only reason that I can see why he did this is just lack of depth, because of lack of experience. This candidate was perfectly good. He didn't understand all this in quite such a clear way, which is normal at this level of experience. But of course, if you fly for certain airlines that are a bit more strict, EasyJet, Ryanair, you might already have these reflexes, even though you're quite fresh in your right seat. So The risk you have is if you're in an airline that doesn't train in such a strict way, that, well, you would be seen as not having the depth that they require, and therefore you are in danger during the selection. Okay, let me give you another example, because this one was quite technical, in fact, but let me give you another example. Continuing on a high energy approach, I had this also with another client, and he described, so the recruiter would ask, tell me a time where you had a difficult flight, a situation that was difficult to manage, and the candidate described a high energy approach. And this is fairly common that this happens because you'd get a shortcut or maybe you'd miscompute your approach in the first place. And making mistakes fine, how you deal with it is what's important. So arriving with too much energy, he failed to communicate properly with the captain in the first place. When you have too much energy, the thing is you need to recognize it at some point and say, oh, I think we're too high. I think we're arriving too fast. He failed to do that and basically just kept it inside himself, because when he described the scenario to me, he told me, oh yeah, we arrived too high. And then when I arrived at the FAF, we were a little bit too high and we were also too fast. And I said, well, okay, tell me what you did at 10,000 feet. Tell me when you computed your altitude and your energy. Tell me what you said. And he said, no, I didn't say anything. You see, he said, oh, he told me a lot of things that would rather not hear. So then after that, he also decided, instead of doing a discontinued approach, which is basically to refuse to descend on the ALS and to try and just do another approach and ask ATC for new vectors, he descended on the ILS anyway. And they got unstable, which means that below 1,000 feet, that was the policy at his airline, he still wasn't stable. And they got stable at 800 or 900 feet, I think, with still one acceptable item that was still missing that got done at, I think, well, that was an item that could be deferred, and that got done at 600 feet. So, but they were unstable at 900 feet, no doubt. And they had been carrying a lot of instability during the whole approach, being quite distracted, with communication not flowing between the two of them. And as he was describing the scenario to me, I was like, well, when's he actually doing the right thing? At no point did he do the right thing here. Lack of communication, lack of awareness initially, then lack of communication, then continuing onto an approach that was not going to be a winner and taking a risk. By the way, the more you go down on an approach like this, the more you take risks, and then making an inadequate decision. And what happened is I told him, why didn't you go around? He said, well, I didn't think the captain wanted to go around. And then I was like, okay, well, you see, now as a recruiter, you cannot accept that, because you've got actually no evidence whatsoever of healthy behaviors. If this candidate is watching this now, I know that you've understood, and I know that now, well, you know that you should either have, well, you should have done a few things. First of all, noticed it before, but that's fine. As a beginner, the airplane, if you get a shortcut, it's not as easy to manage as when you have more experience. You should have told the captain, hey, I think we're high. Do you agree? What do you have any advice? Should we go down and slow down, or should we slow down now and go down later? Or should we ask for delaying vectors, or should we ask to hold and ask for the captain for some help? Okay. And then he should have used a discontinued approach technique. And then he should have just gone around earlier. That's as simple as that. This situation really presents major issues. It's a breach of SOPs, which recruiters will find unacceptable, and a lack of situational awareness. The candidate did not fully understand what he should have done differently. Okay. Such mistakes are a red flag in a selection process, and recruiters look for pilots who can reflect on their actions and demonstrate a mature understanding of situations. So now that you've seen these two examples and how they could really be a problem if you bring them like that in a recruitment room, now, how should you prepare effectively? First of all, understand what recruiters expect from you. You've seen a lot of the videos that we've posted. For those of you who are on our course, and if you're not, come on our course, you will understand in detail what recruiters expect from you, and you can hopefully see from this video how I asked the questions that I wanted the answers to and I didn't get them. So understand what the recruiters are trying to achieve here, the healthy behaviors that they want. Study your airline's SOP and ensure that you know the procedures and limitations really well. Okay. Everything I'm telling you right now is written in the FCOM, the FCTM, the OMA, and in the multiple communications that you're getting from your airline. Even if your airline isn't structured like Ryanair or EasyJet, it's probably got really good procedures. So if you know your books, it's probably written what they expect you to do. If they tell you that you're supposed to go around if you're not stable at 1,000 feet, well, that's what you should do. There's not much leeway here unless there would be a greater risk, such as you being on your third approach and running out of fuel. in a severe way, then maybe, okay, but in most cases that you would describe, the one that we did right now, there was enough fuel for a go-around. There was no reason not to execute that go-around. Okay, so study your airline's SOP and ensure that you know the procedures and limitations. Keep learning, discuss with colleagues, ask questions to your fellow co-pilots that are a bit more senior, or those who join with you and might have encountered similar situations. Ask questions to captains that you have come to know and like. Ask questions to instructors. They're here for that. Instructors love to teach and to teach you to pass on what they know. And take any additional training that you can get from those colleagues. And then set and follow clear limits. The limits are quite clear in your company material, and try and be standard and use SOPs as a strong guidance. Okay, you know that I teach that you shouldn't follow SOPs into your grave for sure. If the SOP is not working, you should do something else. But SOPs such as the stabilized approach criteria or holdover times, they are not here just for show. They are here to be used and they are here to be respected. Okay, the recruiter in this case wants to see an understanding, situational awareness, proper application, and proper use of procedures, basically. So study your airline's SOP, keep learning, discuss with colleagues, set yourself limits. And then, of course, you have our training courses. They're here for that. That's why we created them, so that you get to know, if you're not yet in an airline, how airline operations work. But also, if you are already in an airline, but you are going for an even better selection, structure your mind around what major airlines expect of you. So our training courses help you structure your approach, approaching your recruitment, and develop the behavioral skills expected in a recruitment phase. So like I said before, we also have these advanced interview practice sessions every 2 weeks to help you train with others. We ask 4 candidates a question. We take them randomly amongst those who are on the Zoom call, and we see how they react to these questions, and then the others can observe. It's a great way. Every 2 weeks, you get to be exposed like that, and sometimes you will be asked the question, and you will see how you respond on the spot. It's a very, very good system. Of course, you can also take consultations, and you can do one-to-one sessions with us, but this kind of helps you to train, on a regular basis, to do some sort of continuation training of what you've learned on the course. Also, we'll soon launch a new course called the Operational Procedures course. We're very proud of this course, where we explain in detail what is expected of you in a major airline, covering SOP principles, line operations management, risk areas. We describe specific failure cases at various stages of flight and how an experienced pilot is expected to deal with them. And then we debrief a few incidents and accidents where those very cases happened and how basically things could have been done better. So if your selection is coming up and this operational procedures course is not yet out, that's okay. What we teach you in advanced interview course and any package that includes it is sufficient. You can also discuss with us on Discord and come to the advanced interview practice sessions where we cover a lot of these concepts so that you build muscle and skill around what is expected of you. But if the operational procedures course is out, this will be a great tool for you to basically build even more muscle and come to your interview even more prepared. All right, so if your selection is coming up, just be aware of these pitfalls, prepare wisely, join our Discord community, and visit our How It Works page for more information. We're always happy to support you and to answer your questions. I wish you the best of luck in your preparation and success in your selection.